technical. Happy New Year.
Yep.
But we have a special guest today who is a dear friend of both of ours. We're here with Nancy Beane, who has so much experience and will be talking to you today about the college process. Even if you have a child who's only in first grade, it's good to have this knowledge, and she has so much to offer. Nancy was in education for 46 years at all levels except for eighth grade. And she was a college counselor at Westminster for 28 years, and it included being the college counselor for my oldest daughter. So I have direct experience with her brilliance. And then in 2016 and 2017, it's important to note that she was president of the National Association for College Admission Counseling, NACAC. But welcome, Nancy. We are so happy to have you here today, and we're eager for your wisdom.
Well, I am glad to be here. And it's important also to know that Peyton was one of my students.
I was
So,
about to say, I was like, Nancy was a mentor and a guide and probably got me into college too. So,
well, and whenever students say that, I say, no, you got yourself in. I loved being along for the ride. And it was, I think, important work, and we did it together. So,
you're amazing. We're so glad you're here.
thank you. It's good to be here.
All right, I'm just going to talk about these key takeaways. And you know what? I had a great conversation with Nancy the other day to talk about this program. And these are somewhat random, but what they represent is what my heart felt at the end of our conversation, because I heard Nancy say over and over again that every child develops at his or her own pace. And as an educator myself, that really resonated. And I love, sending that message. The second one, of course, avoiding comparisons. We are all so tempted to compare our children to everyone else's children. And you will hear it from Nancy, I'm sure, some more today, to avoid comparisons. And then this one makes sense to me, and she may not have emphasized this, but I heard her wisdom, and I know to pass on, listen to your college counselor. So we won't spend much time on the key takeaways. Let's hear from Nancy.
Well,
All
great.
right.
For those of you in the lower school, I'm not sure how many are in lower, middle, or upper, but for those of you in the lower school, I think the biggest thing is just to love your child. Enjoy this period. I know it doesn't seem like it now, but before you know it, they will be in high school. The time seems to go faster and faster. And I had a daughter who went all the way through Westminster, was Alpha Omega. Um, and there's no way at this stage of the game that you can tell what your child is going to be like by the time they're in high school or ready to go to college. I'll tell you a quick story, and this is jumping ahead of the lower school now, but we had a guy named Gary Ripple that came one night years ago, and he had three children. And he said his first child, he was the head of admissions at William and Mary, and he said his first child was perfect for William and Mary. So he said to him, son, I've got the perfect school for you, William and Mary. Said the guy looked at him and said, Dad, I am not going to William and Mary. He wouldn't even apply. Ended up going to Franklin and Marshall, and he loved every minute of it because it was his. Second child was not a particularly good student, and he said, I said to him, son, you can go anywhere you want, but you're not going to William and Mary. He said, that's exactly where I'm going. He said they finally let him in because I was the dean of admission, and he didn't do well first semester, but then it was his school, and he did really well after that. And then the third child was a girl. She was 16 at the time he talked to us. He said, you think I'm so smart with what I'm doing as dean of admission. Do you know what my daughter calls me? She calls me moron. So, that's jumping ahead. But what I'm saying in the lower school, you have no idea at this point what your children are going to be like when they're older. And so love them, hold them accountable for whatever structure you have in your family. Listen to your teachers in the lower school because they work with your children all day long, and they know, and they will do anything they can to help that child continue to grow at his or her own pace. So I think those are the biggest things that you would do. I think a couple of other things on the lower school, and this is just from a personal standpoint, but I think you're better off if you don't try to control everything that they're doing. And also make sure that you don't overschedule your child. They need some time just to be little children, to enjoy each other. And so I think those are my biggest pieces of advice for the lower school. Everything I'm hearing about the lower school now is wonderful. There's so much going on, and it's quite different than it was when my Catherine was there. But it's a fabulous school, and I love this picture that you have up here of the kids.
Thank you. Peyton, do you have any comments that you want to add, Peyton?
Well, actually, yeah, I think, Nancy, I love your note about not controlling your children or not overscheduling children. Are there any particular traps that you think parents fall into or worries that make them do that you could give some advice about?
Well, yeah, this has to do with the comparison, and I'll use my own child here. I remember she came home in pre-first and she said, "Mommy, they can all read but me." And I went, "Oh, Catherine, surely not." So I called the teacher, and the teacher laughed and said, "Nancy, there are three of them that can read as well as you and I knew one of them." She said, "There are three of them that can't read a lick, and all the rest of them are in the middle. Catherine's in the middle, so do not worry about Catherine. She is going to be fine." So I think, again, that just speaks to trusting the school, trusting the teachers. And, we all have our stories about our own children, but I think those are the biggest points.
I think that's great. We're going to try to save the last 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. I thought Peyton would handle that. We could send them in the chat. So if you are thinking of them along, feel free to go ahead and put your questions in now. I do think it's really, really important not to evaluate your child's college aptitude based on their elementary school performance.
Oh, yes.
It's so important. I did have a parent who said to me after her child got a bad grade on a 10-point French quiz in 3rd grade, this mother said, "I guess my child won't go to Harvard." Now that's an extreme example, but it does show you that even we're tempted in the back of our mind to evaluate our child's college appropriateness when they're 8, 9, 10. But we have so many counter examples of children who we were just discovering their getting kinks out of their learning styles in elementary school. It had nothing to do whatsoever, and they went on to be great success. So avoid the temptation to start evaluating.
That's really important because you honestly, as I said earlier, have no idea what your child will be like by the time they're in high school. You really don't.
So what about middle school, Nancy?
Well, middle school is just such a time of change. You see the young ladies generally maturing a little more quickly than a lot of the guys. And that can come with some problems too. It's who gets to sit with whom in the lunchroom and that type thing, and that a lot of emotion. I may be wrong, but from what I remember and hear from parents now, you'll ask the little girl, "How was school today?" And she generally will tell you all about school. You ask the little boy about school in the middle school, "How was school today?" "Great." "What'd you do?" "A lot." That's it. Now, again, those are stereotypes because we all have different children. So I would think in middle school, they're prepping for high school. They are getting ready. The teachers work really hard with them to make sure that they have a good foundation for when they go into high school. So again, just enjoy your child, hold them accountable. Don't compare them to anyone else. Even in middle school, you just have no idea what these kids are going to be like 4 or 5 years from then, and especially what they're going to be like when they're grown.
Yeah.
So
from what I could see, there was a lot of assertiveness training. Peyton, teaching the child to speak directly to the teacher. When you were in middle school, did you experience that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think well, in middle school is a great time to practice that, right? That is the time where they're starting to build that independence away from you as parent and towards them as, independent person. And it's great to let them miss their homework in middle school. It's great to let them get an F on a test in middle school. It's great to, help them when those things happen. You don't swoop in and fix it for them, but say, okay, man, that's tough. What do you want to do about it? Or how are you
Yeah.
going to solve that problem? Nancy, are there any things that you see, if you were given, I feel like in kind of high performing schools, a lot of parents are saying like, well, okay, middle school's the foundation, lower school, they build that's kind of social emotional learning stuff. And then middle school, it's like, if they're not getting straight A's and, do kids have to get straight A's in middle school?
No,
Tell us,
no,
tell
no.
us a little bit about grades and how parents should respond to help their children do well.
Well, I think one of the school psychologists that we used to use, Janet Franzoni, said one time, tell your child do the best. Well, that sometimes can be a little problematic too. But if you're saying to your child, did you prepare for that? Did you get ready to take that test? Did you turn in your work on time? And that type thing. And so I think the biggest things are just to, know a little bit about what your child's doing. But again, as Peyton says, don't try to swoop in and fix everything for them. It is really important to fail on things. None of us we don't get everything just right. And I remember one of the guys saying to me that he went off to college and he made this kid beside him had straight A's in his high school and made an F on something, and the kid was just falling to pieces. And he said to the kid, "You never made a bad grade in high school?" And he said, "No, did you?" And he said, yeah. But that was why he was well prepared to be able to do something better. So I think your point about saying, how are you going to fix this? What will you do next time that'll be different? And I love what you said about getting the student to go to the teacher and talk to him or her about the issue rather than wanting mom and dad to fix it. Mom and dad to fix it is not an answer. It's just not.
Yeah. I heard a lot of that in our conversation the other day. Let's cruise on to the upper school where so much advice came. What about upper school?
Well, upper school, somebody said to me not long ago, what about ninth grade? Is that an important grade? It is. But I will say, let's say your child gets into high school and for whatever reason, the adjustment is not so easy and the grades are not so good. Colleges generally are looking more at the improvement that you make. So while grades can count, they don't always count in ninth grade for all colleges. There are certain ones that don't look at anything until you get to grade 10. But they are important because, again, you are building that foundation for doing better as you get a little bit older. So in terms of when the whole college process starts, at Westminster, generally, we don't start until junior year. I know that can be a little nerve-wracking, but it's important, again, whether it's lower school, middle school, or upper school, for you to let your child be who she or he is. And so if they are ready for getting involved, for taking honors classes, AP classes, that's great. But again, listen to the teachers. Our own daughter did not get into honors English. We don't even have that anymore. But didn't get into honors English in the 8th grade. And, we were worried and we thought, oh my goodness, that ended up being her strongest point when she was in high school. So again, listen to the faculty, listen to the teachers. In terms of the college process, though, for high school, and they may have even made some changes since I left a few years ago. But what they generally do is they meet with the student for about 30 minutes or 45 minutes when that student is a junior in the fall. And then in the winter, they meet with the parents and the students. And then in the spring, they may have a third meeting. The counselors are there. You can sign up for meetings with them if you need to go see them. Sarbeth Fleming was one of the counselors at our school for a while, and she had this young lady who came in her office all the time. And she said, you just can't stay in here because I have things on my computer that you just can't see. And so you need to go away some so I can get all my work done. And the young woman said, she just kept coming. So finally, Sarbeth said to her, you can go stand in that corner over there and you can stay here the whole time with me if you want to. So at the end of the school year, the young woman made a plaque for her, and it used her name, and she said, this is so and so's corner. So I will say that the college counselor can't see you all day long every day, but you don't want to be in there all day long every day anyway. So it's important for the student to really get to know the college counselor and trust the process. Again, when I started college counseling at Westminster, we had 2 counselors, one for the boys, one for the girls. Now there are 5 counselors, and that has turned out to be really good because they get a chance to go visit colleges a lot more. They go to conferences every year. And back when we only had 2 of us, we were teaching and we were grade chairs too. And the process was a little different back then too. So all of those things I think are important to listen to the counselors. Going
Nancy,
on,
can I interrupt? I want to make sure before we have our questions that you
yeah.
say the part about when your child's in junior year, meeting together as a family. And you talked about being transparent with your child. Can you reiterate those points?
Yeah, that was where I was going next. So your
Oh,
primary
good.
responsibility when you get to that stage with your child is to set the parameters. They can mainly be financial parameters. You know by that time what you think you'll be able to afford or not able to afford. And so you set that financial parameter. It can be a philosophical one. You are not going to that school. It can be a geographical one. You're not going to California because it's going to fall off the earth when the earthquake comes. And the kid can say, that is the dumbest thing you've ever said to me. And you say, I don't care. It's my money now, my choice. Now, I don't want you, I hope you won't have to be too rigid, but the primary responsibility is that financial one. Don't pull the rug out from under your child's legs when he or she gets in and you never had this talk about finances, because telling them at that point you can't go is crushing. So they can know from the very get-go that they absolutely can go if they get some need-based aid or if they get some scholarships, and you have to check and find out if those schools are even giving those. So that's the biggest thing. Then once you have set those parameters, it's honestly important for you to let go and let this process become your son or daughter's process. They're in control. So maybe they didn't turn in something when they were supposed to. They'll do it better the next time. So the counselors do keep up with them. I did used to laugh and say to the parents, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you just cannot go back to sleep because you're so worried about something with your child and you think the college counselor needs to know about it, call their school number, obviously not a cell number or anything like that. Leave a message. The next day, the counselor can see that child and the child won't even know that you called. So you are not the potted plant. I often feel like parents think they're the potted plant. When we went through the process, my daughter said to me, you cannot speak to any of the people at the colleges we visit. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And she said, I don't care what you do. You're not speaking to the colleges. So you're going to run into some interference, so to speak, from your children sometimes. And again, if you let the process be their process, keep an open mind about schools. There are so many really good schools out there. And what will matter more is what that young person does at that school. So I could give you 100 schools that I think could be good fits for your children. So please keep an open mind. Have your child keep an open mind. Again, don't ever make comparisons with other people's children. I decided my first year in college counseling that I wasn't going to any more Christmas parties. That didn't end up happening, but because the first Christmas party I went to that year, everybody wanted to talk to me about colleges. And that was my 2-week vacation. We weren't going to talk about colleges then. So be careful going to too many gatherings where you might have a temptation to discuss the college. If people ask you where your child's applying, just say, they're applying a lot of places and that's it, and change the subject. So those are some of the points that I wanted to make about that. Visiting colleges. It's a good idea to start visiting colleges. If you're going on a trip and you happen to be in a city and you want to see what that college is like, that's great. By the time the student gets to us, they should have some sense of, do they want a large school, a small school, a school in a big city, a school in a rural area, a school in a college town? And those are questions we'll ask them in order to help them make a list of places that they want to go. So I don't know if there's anything else on that. There will be some meetings that Steve Frappier, the director of college counseling, and the other counselors will have with parents. We used to have a 9th grade parents meeting, a 10th grade parents meeting, an 11th grade parents meeting. Those are general kind of meetings where you don't discuss your own particular child, but you just have an opportunity to ask questions overall, and that really is good. You also, I'm trying to think. Oh, there's going to be a dean's night coming up soon, and those meetings sometimes are open to everybody. Sometimes it's just upper school parents, but I'll try to get some information back to Becky and Peyton so that they can post some opportunities. There's also, if you are in the middle school or upper school, if any of you have tuned in, there's also a college fair that NACAC is putting on, and I'll be there the whole time. It's on Sunday, the 26th of February, 26th of January, and it's cost $15 to park. It's at the Georgia International Convention Center, and there should be somewhere close to 200 colleges there. There also will be some sessions that they can talk about financial aid. There'll be some sessions. Steve Frappier is doing a session on getting into college. So there'll be different opportunities for you as time goes on.
Nancy, so, probably most of the listeners that we have on right now are parents of elementary school students. Yeah. So they don't need to go to those meetings, right?
No,
like what
no.
age are you thinking, like if you've got a 9th grader?
Yeah, if you've got a 9th grader or even in middle school, that you could get something out of the sessions. But, there again, I don't think it's good to push your child to say, we really ought to start thinking about college right now, because that doesn't do anything except getting everybody revved up. If I can give you the one thing that all my students to a person said to me after the process was over, I wish I hadn't let myself get so revved up about this whole process.
Is there anything parents, sometimes people perceive parents as like the pushers, like, oh, you must get into my alma mater, or, oh, you must get a, academic scholarship to this Ivy League school or whatever. Is there anything that parents kind of accidentally do to put the pressure on? Because most of us don't think we're that person, right? But is there anything we do accidentally?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I will tell you, one year we did something where the kids filled out some papers. What would you tell your parents about the college process? And just a one-liner. And the biggest thing there was the kids were scared they were going to disappoint their parents, that they weren't good enough. And that is critical for that child to know that they have your support totally. And again, that you're open-minded and that there are all sorts of really good schools out there. I remember a young lady who wanted to go to Princeton and she didn't get in. And she and her mother came in to see me. And I love the mother's attitude, because she said, you know what? We're going to find something that's going to be a lot better fit for her. She did go to an incredible school. She did a graduate degree. Life has been wonderful for her. So yes,
Awesome.
don't push.
I'm afraid we're just about at our end here, but we started it a little bit late. Was there anyone who wanted to just call out a question, or send Peyton or the group chat a question? While that's happening, I do remember a question from a parent previously, Nancy, who said, I've noticed that my elementary age child is extremely creative. Is there something different that should be done when you notice that you have a very creative child?
Well, I would say, and you all may know this better than I do, but I would say encourage that creativity in every way that you can, because that can make a huge difference in terms of the way that child develops. Um, and again, you don't know necessarily, you may not see that creativity. It may not come about, so to speak, until later, and the child realizes how creative he or she is, and you encourage that too. So yeah.
I love that. And I would add that all of the things that we see in our children, whether we find out they're really good and interested in math, or they love art or filmmaking or whatever it is that they like, that we encourage those things for them as a whole person. And we never connect those things to academic performance, so that they're pursuing their interests out of love and interest and passion for those things, not as a box to be checked.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'll tell you, on the upper school level, Jan term is the best thing I think we have done in a long time. It has allowed those kids that are really creative to plug into some very different kinds of programs. And I think you do that in the middle school too,
Yeah,
a
there's
Jan term type thing, or maybe it's at the end of school.
So there's two questions in the chat, and yeah, May ATL is at the end, Nancy, but two questions in the chat, and I'm going to read both of them, and then you can
Okay.
decide which one you want to answer and all that. So the first question is there anything we need to plan ahead about what courses to select in high school, or will the counselor give advice for that? And
Okay.
then the second question is there a percentage of parents at Westminster that hire outside help or guidance?
Okay, I'm glad you brought both of those up. Um, Go back to the first question again, and read that one for me one more time.
Is there anything that parents need to do to plan ahead about what courses to select in high school, or will the counselor give advice for that?
Well, the college counselor won't, but you'll have the grade chairs. And so in middle school, you start laying that foundation. Sometimes the student may be in regular math and then want to move to honors math. And again, you do that in consultation with the teachers and with the grade chair. And so we do look at the juniors' courses of choice as they get ready to go into the senior year. But for the most part, they're going to be working with their grade chairs, and we do meet with the grade chairs often so that we have a good idea, and they will talk with us and ask questions and so forth. So in terms of the parents, again, I think it's going to be what the middle school teachers and grade chairs are suggesting that they start with. And then sometimes they just take off like a rocket and say they move into honors and AP. A lot of times we'll hear questions, should I take the AP and make a B, or the regular course and make an A? And hate to tell you, they'll say, take the AP course and make an A. But again, that's, a bit unrealistic sometimes.
So the second question was about hiring outside help or guidance.
You should not need to do such. If you feel strongly that you need a second opinion and you want to go do that, it certainly is your prerogative to do it. And I know a lot of good independent counselors. However, you pay plenty of money to Westminster. The college counselors, that's their whole job, is to work on the college process with the child. And so you should not need that. We read over essays. In the fall, we have group kinds of things where they can come in during office hours, and they might end up talking to, generally you talk to just your college counselor, but in terms of reading over those essays, they will do that. So you should not need to hire an independent counselor unless you just truly think you need a second opinion, or unless you think your child is not going to take care of business. But if they don't take care of business, maybe that's an answer as to what they should and shouldn't be doing to pursue. So I hope that helps.
That's awesome. Listen, we are so thankful that you took the time to join us today, Nancy. There's a good crowd of people listening, and we will have recorded this so that people will be able to access it on Bo Ben Consulting YouTube channel. So thank you so much for being here. Everybody spread the word about food for thought.